Elena Martinez had nothing. Just a uniform, a mop, and mountains of debt. But finding that diamond ring in Suite 1507 changed everything. One cleaning shift collided with a billionaire's secret, and now he's on his knees before her. Power, truth, and choices. Intertwined. What happens next? The morning sun glinted off the polished marble floors of the Pinnacle, Manhattan's most exclusive luxury hotel. Elena Martinez adjusted her gray uniform and pushed her cleaning cart toward the elevator, ignoring the ache in her feet. At 28, she'd spent the last 5 years cleaning up after the kind of people who never had to clean up after themselves. "Martinez, you've got the executive suites today," barked Diane, the head of housekeeping, handing Elena a list. 1507 needs priority. The guest checked out early but is returning tonight. Make it perfect. Elena nodded silently, used to the commands. Her mind was elsewhere, on the stack of medical bills waiting at her small Brooklyn apartment, on her mother's deteriorating health, on the second job she'd need to take if the hospital increased the payment plan again. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The elevator doors opened to the 15th floor, reserved exclusively for the hotel's most prestigious guests. Elena wheeled her cart down the hushed corridor, its thick carpeting muffling her footsteps. Suite 1507 was at the end of the hall, the corner penthouse with views of Central Park that cost more per night than she earned in a month. She knocked gently, calling out housekeeping as protocol required, then used her keycard to enter when there was no response. The suite was a disaster, evidence of a hastily abandoned night. Champagne bottles, scattered clothing, paperwork strewn across every surface. Someone had left in a hurry. Elena sighed and got to work. She'd seen worse. Much worse. The rich were often the messiest, secure in the knowledge that someone else would clean up their chaos. As she gathered empty glasses and straightened the sitting room, she tried not to think about how her mother's medication had doubled in price last month, or how her landlord had hinted at another rent increase. In the bedroom, the king-sized bed was a tangle of expensive sheets. As Elena stripped them, something caught the light, falling from between the linens with a soft thud onto the plush carpet. She bent down and froze. There, gleaming against the cream-colored floor, was a ring. Not just any ring. A massive diamond solitaire set in platinum, surrounded by smaller diamonds that sparkled like captured stars. Elena carefully picked it up, the weight of it surprising in her palm. This was no ordinary piece of jewelry. Even with her limited knowledge, she could tell this was worth a fortune, perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars. Her heart raced as she examined it, turning it in the light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For one wild, desperate moment, a thought flashed through her mind. This tiny object could solve all her problems. Her mother's medical bills, the rent increases, the crushing debt that kept her awake at night. But as quickly as the thought came, Elena dismissed it. That wasn't who she was, who her mother had raised her to be. With a heavy sigh, she placed the ring in the secure pocket of her uniform where she kept found items to turn in to management. "Elena, you still working on 1507? Diane's voice crackled through the walkie-talkie clipped to her belt. "Yes, almost finished," Elena replied. "I found a valuable item to turn in." "Well, hurry up. The guest just called. He's returning earlier than expected and needs the room ready." Elena quickened her pace, finishing the bathroom and vacuuming the living area. Just as she was polishing the last of the surfaces, the suite door opened. A man entered. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that screamed custom tailoring. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers, with intense eyes that landed on Elena with surprise. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quickly, gathering her supplies. "I'm just finishing up. I'll be out of your way in a moment." "No rush," he replied, his voice deep and unexpectedly kind. "I apologize for the mess." Elena nodded, keeping her eyes down as she'd been trained to do. The wealthy guests rarely wanted eye contact from the staff. It made them uncomfortable to acknowledge the people who cleaned their toilets. "Actually," he said, setting his briefcase down, "have you found a ring by any chance? Platinum setting. Large center diamond?" Elena's heart jumped. "Yes, sir, it's right here." She reached into her pocket and carefully withdrew the ring. "I was going to turn it into lost and found." Relief washed over his face as she placed it in his outstretched hand. "Thank you," This is irreplaceable. He examined it closely, as if ensuring it was undamaged. Most people might have been tempted to keep something like this. I wouldn't do that, Elena said simply. For the first time, he really looked at her, his eyes studying her face with curious intensity. What's your name? Elena Martinez, sir. Elena. He seemed to test the name. I'm Dominic Blackwood. The name hit Elena like a physical force. Everyone in New York knew the Blackwood name, the family that owned half of Manhattan, whose wealth was measured in billions, not millions. Dominic Blackwood was the heir to Blackwood Enterprises, the financial wunderkind who had doubled the family fortune before his 30th birthday. Thank you for your honesty, Elena, he continued. This ring is worth more than money to me. You're welcome, Mr. Blackwood, she replied, returning to her cart. I'll leave you to your privacy now. Wait. The word stopped her at the door. Please, let me thank you properly. Not many would have turned in something so valuable. Elena shifted uncomfortably. That's not necessary, sir. I was just doing my job. Having integrity isn't just doing a job, he said, reaching for his wallet. Please, accept this as a token of my appreciation. He extended a folded bill toward her. Elena hesitated. Company policy strictly forbidding accepting gifts from guests. But the thought of her mother's medicine. I can't accept money, sir, she said finally. Hotel policy. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. I understand. Perhaps there's another way I can thank you. Elena shook her head. Really, it's fine. I'm glad you got your ring back. As she wheeled her cart into the hallway, she felt his eyes following her, a strange sensation settling between her shoulder blades. She dismissed it as an odd encounter with the ultra-wealthy, the kind of story she'd tell her friend Maria over cheap wine later. Back in the housekeeping office, Diane cornered her immediately. Did you meet him? She demanded, eyes wide with gossip hunger. Mr. Blackwood? Briefly, Elena replied, restocking her cart for the next room. Do you have any idea who he is? One of the richest men in America. Single. Gorgeous. And he specifically asked about you when he called earlier. Elena froze. He what? Asked if we had an Elena on staff. I thought maybe you'd screwed something up. Diane narrowed her eyes. What happened up there? Nothing. I found his ring, returned it, end of story. But it wasn't the end. The next day, Elena was called to the hotel manager's office, her stomach clenching with anxiety. Had she done something wrong? Was she about to lose her job? Miss Martinez, please sit down, Mr. Phillips said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. His expression gave nothing away. Is everything all right? She asked, perching on the edge of the seat. More than all right. I've received a rather unusual request from one of our most valued guests. He slid a cream-colored envelope across the desk. Mr. Blackwood has asked that you be assigned as the dedicated housekeeper for his suite during his extended stay. Elena stared at the envelope. I don't understand. He was impressed by your honesty. The ring you returned was apparently a Blackwood family heirloom worth over $2 million. The room seemed to tilt. $2 million had been in her hand. The amount was incomprehensible. He's requested you specifically, with a substantial tip added to his bill for your services. It's most irregular, but for a guest of Mr. Blackwood's stature. Phillips shrugged. Do you accept the assignment? Elena thought of the extra money, of her mother's medical needs. Yes, I accept. That afternoon, when Elena entered Suite 1507, Dominic Blackwood was seated at the desk, focused on his laptop. He looked up immediately, a smile transforming his serious face. Elena, thank you for accepting my request. It's my job, Mr. Blackwood, she replied professionally, though her heart was beating faster than normal. Please, call me Dominic. He closed his laptop. I have a proposition for you. Elena tensed. She'd heard stories about wealthy men and their propositions to female staff. Seeing her expression, he quickly added, a professional one. I'm in New York for the next 3 months finalizing a major acquisition. I need someone I can trust to maintain my suite, someone with proven integrity. And that's me because I didn't steal your ring? She asked before she could stop herself. To her surprise, he laughed, a rich sound that filled the room. Precisely. That ring has been in my family for generations. My grandmother gave it to me before she died, made me promise to give it only to someone truly special. There was a story there, Elena sensed, but it wasn't her place to ask. I'll take good care of your suite, Mr. Blackwood, Dominic. I know you will. He paused. And perhaps you'll join me for coffee sometimes. I've been told I work too much, and conversations with honest people are rare in my world. Over the next weeks, a strange routine developed. Elena would arrive to clean the suite, and often Dominic would be there, despite the "Do Not Disturb" sign meant to give her privacy to work. He'd offer her coffee, which she initially refused but eventually accepted. They would talk, brief conversations that gradually lengthened as her discomfort eased. She learned he was 34, had attended Princeton, and, despite his wealth, preferred simple food and classic films. He discovered she was supporting her sick mother, had once dreamed of becoming a nurse before financial reality intervened, and made the best churros according to her family recipe. Why housekeeping? He asked one day as she arranged fresh flowers, a task she took extra care with in his suite. Elena arranged a lily before answering. It was available. Flexible hours. I needed something that would let me take my mother to appointments. You never considered something else? With your intelligence, you could... Not everyone has choices, Dominic, she interrupted, then caught herself. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. No, you're right. He looked genuinely chastened. I was born with choices. It's easy to forget not everyone has them. That was the moment something shifted. The billionaire saw her, really saw her, not as a housekeeper, but as a person navigating an unfair world with dignity. One rainy afternoon, Elena arrived to find the suite empty but with a note on the counter. Had to step out for a meeting. Please make yourself comfortable. D. As she worked, thunder crashed outside, and rain lashed against the windows. When she finished, the storm had intensified, streets below flooding with taxi-swamping puddles. Elena checked her phone to find subway service suspended due to flooding. She was contemplating her limited options when Dominic returned, drenched despite his umbrella. Elena! You're still here. Thank God. It's apocalyptic out there. He shed his wet coat. The streets are underwater. Are you stranded? The subways are down, she admitted. I was about to try calling a car service. Nonsense. You'll stay until it's safe. He gestured to the suite. There's plenty of room, and I can't in good conscience send you into that storm. That's not appropriate, Mr. Blackwood. I'm staff, she reminded him, reverting to formality. Tonight, you're someone who needs shelter from a historic storm, he countered, already on his phone. I'm ordering dinner. Preferences? The evening that followed was surreal. They ate Thai food from cartons while watching the storm from the panoramic windows, the city lights blurred by sheets of rain. Dominic shared stories of growing up under the weight of the Blackwood legacy, the expectations, the isolation of wealth. People see the money, not the person, he said, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass. They want something from me, always. Poor little rich boy, Elena teased, then immediately regretted it. But Dominic laughed. Fair enough. First world problems, right? But loneliness feels the same regardless of your bank balance. Is that why you kept finding reasons to be in the suite when I was working? She asked boldly. His eyes met hers, startlingly vulnerable. You treated me like a person, not a bank account or a last name. And you have the most genuine smile I've ever seen. The air between them changed, charged with something dangerous and exhilarating. Elena stood abruptly. I should check if the rain has stopped, she said, moving to the window to break the moment. But the storm outside still raged, matching the turbulence she felt within. This attraction was impossible, impractical, inadvisable. He lived in a world she cleaned with a mop and disinfectant. You can take the guest room. Dominic said, his voice carefully neutral again. I promised to be a gentleman, and he was. Elena spent the night in a bed more comfortable than any she'd ever known, trying not to think about the man in the room down the hall, or the strange connection she felt to someone from a different universe. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. In the morning, the storm had passed, but something intangible remained. A barrier had been crossed. Elena thanked him professionally and left early, telling herself it was a strange anomaly that wouldn't be repeated. But the next day, when she arrived to clean the suite, a small gift box sat on the counter with her name on it. Inside was a beautiful silver bracelet with a small charm, a lily, like the one she arranged so carefully in his vases. The note read simply, "Thank you for the conversation. Your perspective is a gift." Elena should have returned it immediately. Hotel policy was explicit. Instead, she tucked it into her pocket, a secret weight against her heart. Days passed. Their conversations deepened. He asked about her mother, remembering details Elena mentioned only once. She learned about his philanthropic foundation that funded medical research, her mother's exact condition among them. Why that particular disease? She asked one afternoon. My mother had it, he said quietly. We had every resource, every specialist. It still wasn't enough. In that moment, Elena saw past the wealth to the boy who had lost his mother, just as she feared losing hers. His pain was familiar, human, connecting them across the divide of their circumstances. One evening, Elena arrived for her shift to find the suite transformed. Candles flickered throughout the space, and the dining table was set elegantly for two. "What's this?" she asked, standing frozen in the doorway. Dominic emerged from the kitchen, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "I was hoping you might join me for dinner. Not as staff, but as a friend." Every professional boundary screamed at her to refuse. "I could lose my job." "I know. I've been selfish even asking." He ran a hand through his hair. "I just wanted one evening where we could talk without the roles, without the clock ticking on your shift." Elena should have left. Instead, she placed her housekeeping cart outside the door. One dinner. As friends. The evening was magical. Dominic had prepared the meal himself, a surprisingly good paella that reminded Elena of her grandmother's kitchen. They talked for hours, the billionaire and the housekeeper, finding common ground in their love of old movies, their shared grief over lost parents, their dreams for the future. "What would you do if you could do anything?" he asked as they shared dessert, a simple flan he'd ordered from a local Spanish restaurant. "Finish nursing school," she answered without hesitation. "Open a community clinic in my neighborhood where people could get care regardless of insurance." "Why don't you?" "Reality." She shrugged. "Dreams cost money." "Dreams are worth investing in," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. As the evening ended, the air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities. Standing at the door, Elena knew she should leave without complication. Instead, she found herself leaning toward him, drawn by a force beyond reason. Their first kiss was gentle, questioning. The second answered with certainty. When they finally parted, breathless, reality crashed back. "This can't happen," Elena whispered, her hand on the doorknob. "We live in different worlds." "Maybe it's time those worlds collided," Dominic replied. But he didn't try to stop her as she left. The next day, Elena was called into Mr. Phillips' office again. Her stomach dropped when she saw Diane standing there, arms crossed, expression triumphant. "Ms. Martinez, it's come to our attention that you've been engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a guest," Phillips said gravely. "Security footage shows you entering Mr. Blackwood's suite after hours, and remaining for several hours." "The storm," Elena began, but Phillips raised his hand. "We've also received reports that you've accepted expensive gifts from Mr. Blackwood in direct violation of hotel policy." Elena touched her wrist where the bracelet had been, now safely hidden in her apartment. Diane must have seen it. Given these serious breaches of conduct, I'm afraid we have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately. The world seemed to collapse around Elena. Without this job, how would she pay her mother's medical bills? Their rent? Her mind raced through dwindling options as she surrendered her keycard and uniform. Outside the hotel, standing on the sidewalk with a small box of personal belongings, Elena felt the tears she'd been holding back begin to fall. Her phone buzzed Dominic, whose number she'd programmed in during that stormy night. She ignored it, too devastated to talk. Instead, she made her way to her mother's small apartment, dreading having to explain that she'd lost her job because she'd been foolish enough to fall for a man who lived in the stratosphere above her world. Her mother, frail but perceptive, took one look at her tear-stained face and opened her arms. "Emihija, what happened?" Elena collapsed into the embrace, sobbing out the whole story, the ring, the special assignment, the friendship that had become something more, and now, the disaster. "You love him," her mother said simply when Elena finished. "It doesn't matter. It was a fantasy. Now I need to find another job immediately." "Love always matters," her mother replied, "even when it seems impossible." That evening, as Elena searched job listings online, a knock came at the apartment door. When she opened it, Dominic Blackwood stood in the hallway of her rundown building, looking simultaneously out of place in his expensive suit, and somehow exactly where he belonged. "How did you find me?" she asked, stunned. "I have resources," he said simply. "May I come in?" Elena stepped aside, acutely aware of the cramped apartment, the second-hand furniture, the medical equipment in the corner, all the physical manifestations of the gulf between them. "You were fired," he said, his face tight with concern. "I called the hotel when you didn't answer my calls. They told me." "Elena, I'm so sorry. This is my fault." "It's both our faults," she corrected. "We crossed lines we shouldn't have. I've spoken to the hotel management. I offered to make a substantial donation to their employee assistance fund if they would reconsider your termination." Anger flashed through Elena. "You tried to buy my job back? I'm not a charity case, Dominic." "That's not." He stopped, recalibrating. "You're right. I overstepped. I just couldn't bear thinking I'd cost you your livelihood." From the bedroom doorway, a soft voice interrupted. "Elena, aren't you going to introduce your friend?" Her mother stood there, small and determined despite the oxygen tube in her nose. "Mama, this is Dominic Blackwood. Dominic, my mother, Sophia Martinez." To Elena's surprise, Dominic crossed the room and gently took her mother's frail hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Martinez. Your daughter is the most remarkable person I've ever met." Sophia's eyes twinkled. "She is stubborn, like her father. Please, sit. I'll make coffee." "Mama, no, I'll do it. You should rest." But Sophia waved her away, moving slowly to the tiny kitchen. Elena followed, whispering urgently in Spanish about propriety and boundaries, while her mother smiled knowingly and prepared coffee with deliberate care. When they returned to the living room, Dominic was examining the family photos on the wall: Elena's graduation, her father before his death, Sophia in healthier days. "Beautiful family," he said quietly. "The most important thing." Sophia agreed, setting down the coffee tray with Elena hovering anxiously beside her. "More important than money or status, no. Much more." Dominic agreed, meeting Elena's eyes over her mother's head. They talked for an hour, Sophia asking direct questions about Dominic's intentions that made Elena want to sink through the floor. But Dominic answered each one with honesty and respect, winning Sophia over completely by the time she excused herself to rest. "I like him," Sophia whispered to Elena in Spanish as she helped her mother to bed. "He sees you. It's complicated, Mama. Only if you make it so." When Elena returned to the living room, Dominic was standing by the window, looking out at the Brooklyn streetscape so different from his Manhattan views. "Your mother is wonderful," he said without turning. "I see where you get your strength." "What are we doing, Dominic?" Elena asked directly. "This. Us. It can't go anywhere. Your world would never accept someone like me." Now he turned, his expression fierce. "I don't care what my world thinks. Do you know what I realized when I thought I'd lost that ring? That objects wealth, mean nothing compared to what really matters. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. I've spent my life surrounded by people who want something from me. Then I meet you. The one person who could have taken something priceless but didn't, and you're the only one who sees past everything else to just me. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. This isn't a fairy tale. The housekeeper doesn't end up with the billionaire. Maybe it's time for a new story, he said softly. One we write ourselves. 3 months later, Elena stood in the elegant lobby of Blackwood Enterprises, feeling like an imposter in her new navy suit. The receptionist eyed her with thinly veiled curiosity as she announced herself. I have an appointment with Mr. Reynolds, Elena explained, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. After losing her job at the Pinnacle, Elena had faced a crisis. Dominic had offered financial help, which she'd firmly refused, determined to maintain her independence despite their deepening relationship. Instead, he'd mentioned that his company's charitable foundation was hiring a community outreach coordinator. Apply like anyone else, he'd said. No strings pulled. If you get it, it's on your own merit. Elena had spent days perfecting her application, drawing on her community connections and experience navigating healthcare systems with her mother. To her surprise, she'd been called for an interview with Gregory Reynolds, the foundation's director, a man who had no idea she was dating his boss. Ms. Martinez? A polished assistant appeared. Mr. Reynolds will see you now. The interview was grueling. Reynolds was thorough, questioning every aspect of her limited resume, raising an eyebrow at her lack of college degree. Your application is unconventional, he said, reviewing her file. But your knowledge of community needs is impressive. Tell me why you want this position. Elena spoke from her heart about the barriers facing vulnerable communities, the gaps in service she'd witnessed, the difference targeted support could make. As she talked, Reynolds' expression shifted from skepticism to interest. You'd need to complete your education, he said finally. We could accommodate a part-time schedule while you attend classes. 2 weeks later, Elena started her new job at the Blackwood Foundation, determined to prove herself worthy of the opportunity. She and Dominic maintained a careful professional distance at work, their relationship still a closely guarded secret. The arrangement wasn't ideal, but it preserved her credibility with colleagues who would certainly question her qualifications if they knew she was involved with Dominic Blackwood. In the evenings and weekends, though, their worlds intertwined with increasing comfort. Dominic became a regular visitor at the Martinez apartment, charming Sophia with his genuine interest in her stories and his willingness to try her traditional cooking. Elena, meanwhile, gradually adjusted to occasional appearances at his penthouse, though she still felt out of place among his minimalist luxury. You've transformed this place, Dominic said one evening as they prepared dinner together in his rarely used kitchen. It actually feels like a home now. Elena glanced around at the subtle changes, family photos she'd encouraged him to display, colorful throw pillows that softened his austere furniture, potted herbs thriving on the windowsill. It just needed some warmth, she said, stirring the sofrito for their arroz con pollo. It needed you, he replied, kissing her temple as he passed. Everything in my life needed you. Those moments of domestic simplicity felt almost normal, as if the vast differences in their backgrounds could truly dissolve in the face of their growing love. But reality had a way of intruding. One Saturday, they were shopping in a local market, Elena introducing Dominic to the joys of selecting the perfect plantains, when a society photographer recognized him. Suddenly, they were confronted with flashing cameras and shouted questions. Mr. Blackwood, who's your companion? Is this a serious relationship? Dominic instinctively stepped in front of Elena, shielding her from the intrusion. Please respect our privacy, he said firmly, guiding her toward the exit with a protective arm around her shoulders. The following morning, their picture appeared in the society pages. Blackwood heirs mystery woman. WHO, is she? Elena stared at the grainy image of herself looking startled beside Dominic's more composed profile. The article speculated about her identity, noting her ordinary appearance and evident discomfort in the spotlight. I'm sorry, Dominic said when he saw it. I should have been more careful. It's not your fault, Elena assured him, though privately she wondered if this was just the beginning of the scrutiny she would face as part of his world. Her fears proved well-founded. Once the initial photograph circulated, paparazzi began turning up wherever they went. Elena's background was investigated. Her former co-workers at the Pinnacle interviewed. Within days, the narrative emerged. The Billionaire and the Maid. A modern Cinderella story with all the clichés intact. Blackwood slumming it? One particularly vicious headline read, "They're vultures," Dominic fumed, throwing the tabloid aside. None of this matters. But it did matter. Elena's co-workers at the foundation began treating her differently, clearly connecting her to the woman in the news stories. Reynolds called her into his office, his expression grave. "Were you planning to disclose your relationship with Mr. Blackwood?" he asked without preamble. Elena felt her stomach drop. "I wanted to be judged on my own merits." "Understandable," Reynolds nodded. "But this complicates things. There will be questions about favoritism, about your qualifications." "I'm doing good work," Elena said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "My relationship with Dominic has nothing to do with my performance here." "I agree," Reynolds surprised her by saying, "which is why I'm going to support you. But be prepared. Not everyone will be so understanding." He was right. Whispers followed Elena through the foundation offices. Some colleagues became coldly professional, others openly hostile. The community partners she worked with saw the news too, some questioning whether she truly understood their needs now that she had moved up. Through it all, Dominic remained her steadfast supporter, but even he couldn't shield her from the realities of his world. The first time he took her to a charity gala, a fundraiser for the foundation, Elena felt the weight of every stare, the judgment in every smile. "Everyone's looking at me," she whispered as they entered the opulent ballroom. "Let them look," Dominic replied, squeezing her hand. "You outshine everyone here." In her carefully selected dress, the most expensive she'd ever owned but modest, compared to the designer gowns surrounding her, Elena felt painfully conspicuous. Conversation partners asked probing questions about her background and seemed surprised by her articulate responses. One woman examined her as if she were an exotic specimen, commenting that she must find these events, quote, "quite overwhelming compared to what you're used to." Dominic's protective instincts flared. "Elena has more genuine class than most people in this room," he said sharply, causing nearby conversations to falter. Later that night, in the safety of Dominic's penthouse, Elena finally broke down. "I don't belong in your world," she sobbed. "I never will." Dominic held her close. "Then we'll create our own world," he promised. "One where none of that superficial nonsense matters." But the outside world wasn't so easily shut out. The following week, Elena arrived at work to find Reynolds waiting with a troubled expression. "There's been a development," he said, ushering her into his office. "The board has concerns about your position here." "Because of Dominic?" Elena asked, her heart sinking. "Not exactly. It's more complicated." Reynolds hesitated. "Victoria Blackwood has requested a meeting with the board. She's raising questions about recent hiring practices." Victoria Blackwood, Dominic's aunt and the formidable matriarch of the family since his father's death. Elena had heard about her, but never met her. By all accounts, she was a force to be reckoned with, deeply protective of the family legacy. "She doesn't think I'm qualified," Elena stated flatly. "She has concerns," Reynolds admitted. "I've defended your work, which has been excellent, but she wields significant influence." That evening, Elena returned to her mother's apartment instead of Dominic's penthouse, needing the comfort of familiar surroundings. Sophia took one look at her daughter's face and opened her arms. "What happened, Hija?" Elena explained the situation, her fears tumbling out. "His family is going to destroy me, Mama. They'll make sure I lose this job, and then what? Go back to cleaning rooms? And what about Dominic? How long before he realizes I'm nothing but a complication in his perfect life?" Sophia listened patiently, then took Elena's hands in hers. "Do you love him?" "With all my heart." "And does he love you?" "He says he does." Then have faith in that love, Sophia said simply. The world will always try to tell you what you deserve, what you're worthy of. Only you can decide whether to believe it. Later that night, Dominic arrived, clearly having searched for her when she didn't appear at his place. His face was etched with worry until he saw her, safe in her childhood home. "You didn't answer your phone," he said, the relief in his voice palpable. "I needed to think." Elena replied, leading him to the small balcony where they could talk privately. "Your aunt is trying to get me fired." Dominic's expression hardened. "Victoria. I should have known she'd interfere." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'll speak with her." "And say what? That she should accept your maid girlfriend because you say so?" Elena's voice broke. "This isn't going to work, Dominic. Your world and mine. They don't mix." "Don't say that," he pleaded, reaching for her. "We can figure this out." "How?" "I'll always be the girl who cleaned your hotel room. The charity case you elevated. The gold digger after your fortune. Is that what you want? To spend your life defending me to your family, your colleagues, your friends?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "If that's what it takes. But Elena, you're selling yourself short. Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you knows how extraordinary you are." "Your aunt hasn't spent 5 minutes with me. She's just decided I'm not good enough. Then we'll change her mind." Dominic's jaw set with determination. Together. The meeting with Victoria Blackwood was set for the following week, a private dinner at her Manhattan townhouse. Elena spent days agonizing over what to wear, what to say, how to present herself to this woman who held so much power over her future. "Be yourself," Sophia advised. "If she cannot see your worth, that is her failure, not yours." The night of the dinner, Dominic picked Elena up in his car, his usual confidence tempered by obvious tension. "She's tough," he warned as they drove uptown. "But she's not unreasonable. She just wants what's best for the family." "And that's not me," Elena said quietly. Dominic parked outside a stately brownstone and turned to face her. "You're what's best for me. That's what matters." Victoria Blackwood answered the door herself. A striking woman in her 60s, with silver hair, swept into an elegant chignon and penetrating eyes that assessed Elena in one comprehensive glance. "Dominic," she acknowledged, accepting his kiss on her cheek before turning her attention to Elena. "And Ms. Martinez, please come in." The townhouse was old money personified, antiques that had clearly been in the family for generations, artwork that belonged in museums, photographs of Blackwoods posed with presidents and royalty. Elena felt the weight of history and privilege in every room they passed through. Dinner was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive interrogation. Between perfectly prepared courses, Victoria questioned Elena about her background, her education, her career aspirations, all while maintaining a veneer of polite interest. "And your father?" Victoria asked, sipping her wine. "What does he do?" "He passed away when I was 15, Elena replied. "He was a construction worker." "I see. And that's when you began working to support your family?" "Part-time at first, then full-time after high school." Victoria nodded, her expression unreadable. "Admirable. And now you find yourself at our foundation, without the qualifications we typically require. Quite a leap." Dominic tensed beside Elena. "Aunt Victoria." "It's all right," Elena interrupted, placing a calming hand on his arm before addressing Victoria directly. "You're right. On paper, I'm not qualified for my position. I don't have the degrees or the professional experience your foundation usually requires." Victoria raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting this admission. "But I do understand the communities you're trying to serve," Elena continued. "I've lived the challenges they face. I know what works and what doesn't when it comes to support services. That's a perspective your foundation needs if you truly want to make a difference." "And your relationship with my nephew? Is that also a perspective we need?" Victoria's question was blunt. "My relationship with Dominic is separate from my work," Elena replied with equal directness. "I was hired before anyone at the foundation knew we were involved, and I've proven my worth through my performance." "Yet you must see how it appears." Victoria pressed. "A hotel maid catches the eye of a wealthy man. suddenly receives a position at his family's foundation. Appears to whom? Elena challenged, her patience finally fraying. To people like you, who assume someone from my background couldn't possibly have earned such an opportunity. Who believed Dominic couldn't possibly love someone who once cleaned his room? The table fell silent. Even Dominic looked startled by her outburst. Victoria studied Elena for a long moment, then surprised them both by laughing, a genuine, appreciative sound. Well, you certainly don't lack courage. The remainder of the dinner proceeded with a slightly shifted dynamic. Victoria was still formidable, still clearly assessing Elena, but with what seemed like growing respect. As they prepared to leave, she pulled Elena aside, while Dominic retrieved their coats. My nephew has always had everything handed to him, Victoria said quietly. Money, opportunity, admiration. But he's never had someone who challenged him, who saw beyond the Blackwood name. Elena wasn't sure how to respond. I still have concerns, Victoria continued. This relationship complicates many things, but I'm no longer convinced it's a mistake. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't rejection either. As they drove away, Dominic took Elena's hand. That went better than I expected. She's still going to watch me like a hawk, Elena sighed. Of course she is, Dominic smiled. But she'll come around. Victoria respects strength, and you just showed her plenty. The weeks that followed brought an uneasy truce. Victoria withdrew her formal objections to Elena's position, though she began taking a more active interest in the foundation's operations. Elena doubled down on her work, determined to prove her value beyond any doubt. Meanwhile, her relationship with Dominic deepened. They developed rhythms and rituals. Sunday dinners with Sophia, weekend walks in the park, quiet evenings reading together in comfortable silence. Elena enrolled in night classes to complete her nursing degree, with Dominic often quizzing her on medical terminology as she studied. It wasn't perfect. They still faced sideways glances when dining out, still dealt with paparazzi hoping to catch unflattering moments, still navigated the vastly different worlds they came from. But increasingly, these external pressures felt manageable when faced together. Then came the night that changed everything. Elena was working late at the foundation, finalizing details for a new health initiative in her old neighborhood. Her phone rang. Her mother's caregiver, voice tight with controlled panic. Ms. Martinez, your mother has collapsed. The ambulance is taking her to Brooklyn Memorial now. The world tilted. Elena grabbed her things and rushed out, trying desperately to hail a taxi in the rainy evening. When none stopped, she began running toward the subway, her mind a litany of desperate prayer. Not now, not when things were finally stabilizing. Not when Sophia had seemed to be improving with her new treatment. A car screeched to a halt beside her. Dominic's sleek black Tesla. He leaped out, his face etched with concern. Elena, I got your text. Get in, I'll drive you. She hadn't even remembered texting him, but thanked God she had. They sped through the city, Dominic breaking every traffic law, while Elena sat rigid with fear. At the hospital, he parked illegally and stayed beside her as she ran to the emergency department. My mother, Sophia Martinez. She gasped to the reception nurse. She was brought in by ambulance. The next hours passed in a blur of terrifying uncertainty. Sophia had suffered heart failure related to her condition. She was stabilized but critical, moved to the ICU where Elena could only visit for brief periods. Dominic never left the waiting room, arranging for specialists to consult, ensuring Sophia received the best possible care, bringing Elena food she couldn't eat and coffee she drank mechanically. When she emerged from visits with her mother, he was there to hold her, as she alternated between hope and despair. I can't lose her, Elena whispered during the darkest hour of the night. She's all I have. You have me, Dominic said fiercely, and we're not going to lose her. I promise. For 3 days, they maintained their vigil. Elena refused to leave the hospital, sleeping in uncomfortable waiting room chairs, despite Dominic's attempts to convince her to rest properly. He adjusted without complaint, canceling meetings, working remotely when necessary, doing whatever was needed to support her. On the 4th day, Sophia's condition stabilized enough to be moved out of intensive care. When Elena entered her new room, she found her mother looking frail but alert, with noticeably better equipment and amenities than standard rooms. What is this? Elena asked the nurse. This looks like a private suite. It is, the nurse confirmed. Mr. Blackwood arranged it, and he brought in Dr. Patel to consult on your mother's case. He's one of the top specialists in the country. Elena found Dominic in the hallway, talking quietly with a distinguished-looking doctor. When they finished, Dominic turned to her with cautious optimism. Dr. Patel thinks she's a good candidate for a new treatment protocol. It's experimental, but showing promising results. He's already spoken with her primary physician. Elena felt overwhelmed by his quiet efficiency, his absolute focus on helping without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. When the doctor left, she simply held Dominic, unable to find words adequate for what she felt. "Thank you isn't enough," she finally managed. "You don't need to thank me," he replied, stroking her hair. "This is what people do when they love someone. They show up." That night, when Sophia was sleeping peacefully and the hospital had quieted, Elena finally agreed to leave for a few hours to shower and change. In Dominic's penthouse, she stood under the hot water and let the emotion of the past days wash over her. When she emerged, wrapped in his robe, she found him sitting on the edge of the bed, a small box in his hands. "What's that?" she asked, toweling her hair dry. "Something I've been carrying around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." He looked up, his expression surprisingly vulnerable. "This probably isn't it either, but the past few days have made something very clear to me." Elena's heart began to race as he opened the box to reveal the ring, the same magnificent diamond she'd found in his hotel suite all those months ago. "My grandmother gave me this before she died," he said quietly. "Told me to give it only to someone truly special. Someone who saw me, not the Blackwood name or fortune. Someone who challenged me to be better." He stood and approached her, his eyes never leaving hers. "I nearly lost it once, and you returned it to me. Now I want to give it to you, where it belongs." "Dominic," Elena whispered, scarcely able to breathe. He sank to one knee before her, holding the ring up. "Elena Martinez, you turned my perfectly ordered, perfectly empty life upside down. You've shown me what really matters. Will you marry me?" Time seemed suspended as Elena looked at the man kneeling before her, the billionaire now humbled, offering his heart and legacy to the woman who had once cleaned his room. In his eyes, she saw not the wealth or privilege that had separated them, but the genuine love that had slowly bridged those differences. "Yes," she said, her voice strengthening with certainty. "Yes, I'll marry you." As he slid the ring onto her finger, the same ring she had once held and returned, Elena felt the circle of their story completing. From that first moment of honesty to this pledge of forever, they had chosen each other despite every obstacle. The ring caught the light, its brilliance almost blinding. Once, Elena had held this ring and seen only its monetary value. Now she understood its true worth lay in what it represented. Not wealth, but trust. Not status, but love. "It's yours," Dominic whispered as he rose to kiss her. "It always was." News of the Blackwood-Martinez engagement spread like wildfire. The story was irresistible to the media. The billionaire heir and the former hotel maid, a modern fairy tale that captured the public imagination. Some coverage was romantic, celebrating their unlikely love story. Other reports were more cynical, questioning Elena's motives or suggesting Dominic had lost his mind. "Blackwood heir to wed former maid," screamed the headlines. Overnight, Elena became the subject of intense scrutiny. Reporters dug into her past, publishing photos of the Brooklyn apartment building where she'd grown up, interviewing former classmates and co-workers. Some stories painted her as a hard-working immigrant's daughter who'd overcome adversity. Others implied she was a calculating social climber who'd strategically positioned herself in Dominic's path. "How are you handling all this?" Dr. Patel asked during one of Sophia's checkups, nodding toward a tabloid someone had left in the waiting room with Elena's face on the cover. "I'm trying to ignore it," Elena replied, though the constant attention was taking a toll. She couldn't visit her mother without navigating photographers outside the hospital. Her old neighborhood friends were offered money for stories about her. Even at the foundation, she felt colleagues watching her with renewed curiosity. "Focus on what matters," Sophia advised from her hospital bed, looking stronger each day thanks to the experimental treatment. "The rest is just noise." Dominic was equally philosophical. "They'll move on to the next story eventually," he assured her, though his jaw tightened whenever they encountered particularly vicious coverage. The one blessing was Victoria Blackwood's unexpected support. After the engagement announcement, she'd called Dominic to a private meeting that Elena had feared would be a final attempt to end their relationship. Instead, Victoria had emerged as an unlikely ally. "If you're determined to do this," she'd told them over lunch at her townhouse, "then we'll do it properly. The Blackwood name still carries weight. We can shape this narrative." "I don't want to shape a narrative," Elena had objected. "I just want to live our lives." Victoria had fixed her with a steady gaze. "My dear, that luxury disappeared the moment you accepted that ring. Like it or not, you're entering a family with a public profile. The question isn't whether there will be a story about you, but who will tell it." In the weeks that followed, Victoria orchestrated a carefully managed introduction of Elena to New York society. First came a tasteful feature in Vanity Fair. Elena photographed in elegant simplicity in Dominic's penthouse, the accompanying article emphasizing her work at the foundation and her ongoing nursing studies, rather than her former housekeeping career. Next was a strategic appearance at a Metropolitan Museum fundraiser, where Victoria personally introduced Elena to key social figures, effectively signaling her acceptance into the fold. The message was clear. Elena Martinez had the Blackwood stamp of approval. "You're being handled." Elena's friend Maria pointed out during one of their increasingly rare coffee dates. "Repackaged for public consumption." "It's a compromise," Elena sighed. "And temporary. Once the wedding is over and the novelty wears off, people will lose interest." But as the months passed and wedding plans progressed, Elena sometimes wondered if she was compromising too much. The intimate ceremony she'd envisioned had expanded into a social event of the season. The guest list included people she'd never met, business associates, political connections, society figures whose approval Victoria deemed important. "Is this really what you want?" Dominic asked one night, finding Elena staring at seating charts with a vacant expression. "I want to be your wife," she answered honestly. "The rest is just details." But the details were consuming her. Between wedding planning, her foundation work, nursing classes, and hospital visits with her mother, Elena barely had time to breathe. The woman who had once lived a simple, structured life now juggled commitments in two different worlds, never feeling fully at home in either. The breaking point came 6 weeks before the wedding. Elena arrived at a final dress fitting to find not only the designer and Victoria waiting, but a documentary crew Victoria had approved to create a, quote, tasteful record of the Blackwood wedding. "No," Elena said firmly, surprising everyone including herself. "No cameras. No more interviews. No more carefully staged appearances." Victoria's expression tightened. "Elena, we've discussed this. The publicity is changing who I am," Elena interrupted. "I'm grateful for your support, Victoria, truly. But I can't keep doing this." She turned to the bewildered camera crew. "I'm sorry you came all this way. This wedding isn't a public event. It's our life." After they left, Victoria regarded Elena with a mixture of irritation and reluctant respect. "You realize this won't stop the coverage. It will just make it more speculative, more intrusive." "Maybe," Elena acknowledged. "But at least it will be happening outside, not inside our relationship." That evening, Elena arrived at Dominic's penthouse to find him waiting with a surprise. Her mother, now well enough for short outings, seated comfortably on the sofa. "What's this?" Elena asked, kissing Sophia's cheek. "An intervention," Dominic said with a gentle smile. "Your mother and I are worried about you." Sophia took Elena's hand. "You don't look happy." "Am I, Hija? This should be the happiest time of your life." "I am happy," Elena protested. "Just tired. There's so much happening." "That's the problem," Dominic said, sitting beside her. "We've let this become something it was never supposed to be. A society event. A public spectacle." He took her other hand, his expression serious. "I had a realization today. I was in a meeting, completely distracted, and I suddenly thought, what am I doing? The woman I love is somewhere across town being fitted for a dress she never wanted, for a wedding that's becoming more about my family name than our relationship. What are you saying?" Elena asked, her heart beating faster. "I'm saying let's take it all back. The big venue, the society guests, the media coverage. Let's have the wedding we actually want. Elena felt tears welling in her eyes. Can we really do that? With all the arrangements already made? We can do whatever we want. Dominic said firmly. It's our wedding. And more importantly, it's our life. Sophia nodded approvingly. This is the man I want for my daughter. One who remembers what truly matters. 2 days later, Dominic and Elena called Victoria to Dominic's penthouse and outlined their new plan. The society wedding at St. Patrick's Cathedral was cancelled. Instead, they would marry in a small ceremony at Sophia's local church in Brooklyn, with only close friends and family present. This is a mistake, Victoria warned, though with less conviction than Elena had expected. You're throwing away months of careful positioning. No, Dominic replied, his arm around Elena's shoulders. We're reclaiming our story. The change in plans created exactly the media frenzy Victoria had predicted. Speculation ran wild about the reason for the cancellation, with rumors ranging from pre-wedding jitters to pregnancy to family objections. But for the first time in months, Elena felt free. She and Dominic threw themselves into creating the wedding they truly wanted. They selected the flowers together, chose a small local caterer Elena had known for years, and personally wrote invitations to the people who really mattered in their lives. Sophia was delighted by the church choice, the same one where Elena had been baptized, where her parents had married. Your father would have been so proud, she told Elena as they selected readings for the ceremony. Even Victoria, after her initial resistance, found herself drawn into the simpler preparations. She arrived at Sophia's apartment one evening with a vintage lace veil that had been in the Blackwood family for generations. If we're doing this the unconventional way, she said, presenting it to a stunned Elena, we might as well blend traditions properly. The night before the wedding, Elena stayed at her mother's apartment as tradition dictated. Dominic had renovated the place months earlier, improving accessibility, updating appliances, installing better heating, but had carefully preserved its essential character as the home where Elena had grown up. Are you nervous? Sophia asked as they sat together on the small balcony, the Brooklyn night alive with sounds around them. Not about marrying Dominic, Elena replied honestly. Just about everything that comes after. Being a Blackwood, living up to that name. Sophia studied her daughter's face in the dim light. You know what I see when I look at you. Not the future Mrs. Blackwood. I see Elena Martinez, the little girl who worked twice as hard as everyone else, who never gave up, who always found a way. That strength doesn't disappear because you change your name. I'm keeping Martinez, Elena said with a small smile, hyphenating. Elena Martinez Blackwood. Good. Sophia nodded approvingly. Remember where you came from, even as you go somewhere new. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Elena prepared in the small apartment with Maria and 2 childhood friends as her bridesmaids. Her dress was elegant but simpler than the designer creation Victoria had originally commissioned, an ivory sheath with delicate embroidery that honored her heritage while feeling authentically her. When Elena entered the modest church on Sophia's arm, her mother insisting on taking the traditional father's role despite her still fragile health, she saw exactly what she'd hoped for. No society photographers, no business connections, just faces of people who truly cared for them. Dominic waited at the altar, his expression transforming as she appeared. Not even Victoria, seated in the front row in a surprisingly understated suit, could hold back tears at the naked emotion on her nephew's face. You look like you've already received the greatest gift of your life, the priest commented quietly to Dominic as Elena approached. I have, Dominic replied, his eyes never leaving his bride. The ceremony was simple, meaningful, and deeply personal. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises not of blind devotion, but of conscious partnership, of standing together through whatever life brought, of building something new that honored both their backgrounds. When Dominic slid the wedding band alongside the engagement ring, that same diamond that had started their journey, he whispered words meant only for Elena. From the moment you returned this to me, it was always meant to come back to you. The reception was held in the church hall, transformed with twinkling lights and flowers into a space that felt both festive and intimate. A local band played music that blended Elena's Latin heritage with contemporary selections. The catering featured dishes from both their favorites, Sophia's traditional recipes alongside selections from the restaurant where Dominic had first taken Elena on a proper date. What struck guests most was the seamless integration of two seemingly disparate worlds. Victoria Blackwood danced with Elena's uncle to a merengue beat. Dominic's college friends chatted animatedly with Elena's neighborhood friends. Sophia held court at a table where Foundation colleagues brought her plate after plate of delicacies to try. "You've created something remarkable here," Victoria told the couple as the evening progressed. "Not just a wedding, a genuine community." "That's the idea," Dominic replied, his arm around his new wife's waist. "Not my world or Elena's world, our world." As the celebration continued around them, Dominic drew Elena outside for a moment of quiet. Under the Brooklyn night sky, so different from the manicured views of his Manhattan penthouse, he held her close. "Happy?" he asked, searching her face. "Completely," she answered truthfully. "For the first time in months, this feels entirely right." "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "A wedding gift." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a deed to a beautiful brownstone in a neighborhood bridging their two worlds. Neither the elite Upper East Side nor deep Brooklyn, but a vibrant area where diverse communities intersected. "Our home," he explained. "Not my penthouse, not your apartment. Somewhere we create together from scratch." Elena looked up at him with shining eyes. "When did you do this?" "When I realized I was letting external expectations overshadow what really mattered," he said. "I want to build a life with you, Elena, not just fold you into mine." She stretched up to kiss him, pouring all her gratitude and love into the gesture. When they returned to the reception, something had shifted, a final piece falling into place, the certainty that they were truly beginning something authentic and uncompromised. After the wedding, life settled into a rhythm neither could have predicted before they met. They moved into the brownstone, decorating it room by room with items that reflected both their tastes. His modernist art alongside her family photographs, antique Blackwood furniture beside colorful textiles from Elena's heritage. Sophia moved into the garden apartment they created on the first floor, giving her independence while keeping her close. Her health continued to improve under Dr. Patel's care, and she became a beloved fixture in the neighborhood, holding court on the front stoop in good weather, sharing stories with neighbors who quickly became friends. Professionally, Elena completed her nursing degree with honors, balancing her foundation work with clinical rotations. With Dominic's support but on her own merit, she developed a community health initiative that became the Foundation's most successful program, bringing accessible care to underserved neighborhoods like the one she'd grown up in. Dominic, meanwhile, underwent his own transformation. Inspired by Elena's dedication to service, he shifted Blackwood Enterprises toward more socially responsible investments. He reduced his corporate hours to teach business ethics at a local college, finding unexpected fulfillment in mentoring students from backgrounds similar to Elena's. Victoria, initially skeptical about these changes, became their surprising champion. She discovered a second act as the Foundation's board chair, bringing her formidable networking skills to bear on fundraising for causes she'd once considered beneath her notice. "You've revolutionized this family," she told Elena during a quiet moment at a Foundation event a year after the wedding, "and I'm beginning to think we needed it." Not everything was perfect. They still faced occasional media intrusion, still navigated the complexities of their different backgrounds. Christmas at the Blackwood family estate was a different experience from Three Kings Day celebrations with Elena's extended family. Their approaches to money, to social obligations, to daily routines sometimes created friction that required patient negotiation. But the foundation they'd built was strong, a relationship based not on fantasy or compromise, but on genuine acceptance of each other's whole selves. The woman who'd once cleaned hotel rooms and the man who'd inherited billions had found common ground in their shared values, their commitment to creating something meaningful together. 18 months after their wedding, Elena discovered she was pregnant. The news coincided with the opening of the Martinez Blackwood Community Health Center, the project she'd poured her heart into, located in her old neighborhood but serving patients from across the socio-economic spectrum. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Dominic watched his wife with pride as she addressed the gathered crowd, her slight baby bump visible under her simple dress. Sophia sat in the front row, beaming with joy, while Victoria stood nearby, uncharacteristically emotional at this tangible evidence of her nephew's growing legacy. When the speeches ended and the center officially opened, Dominic found Elena showing Victoria the pediatric area they'd created with particular care. "This is where the real work begins," Elena was explaining. "Prevention, education, building trust with families early. And perhaps where your child will receive their check-ups," Victoria suggested with uncharacteristic sentimentality. Elena smiled, placing a hand on her stomach. "Absolutely. This baby will understand both sides of their heritage, the privilege and the responsibility." Later that evening, as they walked through their brownstone's front door, Dominic paused in the entryway, pulling Elena into his arms. "Do you ever think about how all of this started?" he asked. "With a ring I almost lost, and the honesty of a woman who could have taken it but didn't." Elena leaned into his embrace. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd worked a different section that day, or if you'd checked out later." "I don't believe it was chance," Dominic said, his hand joining hers over their growing child. "Some things are meant to be, even when they seem impossible." Looking around their home, the perfect blend of their two worlds, Elena knew he was right. Their journey had defied expectations, crossed boundaries, and created something neither could have imagined alone. A former hotel maid and a billionaire heir had built a bridge between their worlds, not by denying their differences, but by valuing what each brought to their shared life. "The ring found its way back to where it belonged," Elena said softly, "just like we found our way to each other." Dominic's hand gently caressed her face. "That day in the hotel suite, when you handed it back to me, did you ever imagine where we'd end up?" "Never," Elena admitted. "But now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Their lips met in a kiss that held all the certainty of their shared journey, from that first meeting as maid and guest to their current reality as partners, lovers, soon-to-be parents. The impossible had become not just possible but beautifully, magnificently real. As twilight settled over their brownstone, Sophia called from the garden apartment that dinner was ready. Victoria's voice joined hers. The two women who had once represented opposite ends of a social spectrum, now united in their love for the couple who had bridged that divide. Elena and Dominic joined hands, moving toward the sounds of family and connection. The former maid and the billionaire had found something far more valuable than any diamond ring. They had found a love that transcended boundaries, that saw beyond surfaces to the truth of who they really were. In the end, it wasn't about wealth or status or where they had started. It was about the choice they had made, every day since that first meeting, to recognize what was genuine and to fight for what mattered most. The courage to reach across divides. The wisdom to value character above circumstance. The faith to believe that love, honest and uncompromising, could build bridges strong enough to unite even the most distant shores. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.